IVLA. Today we have with us Vito Dipinto, who has been a tenured faculty member at the National College of Education, National Louis University. For over 35 years, he's been teaching visual literacy to K through 8 students and pre-service and classroom teachers. He began his professional life as an organic chemist and a performance artist. His longest performance piece is something he calls teaching. Kaki Dipinto, his wife, is an adjunct at National Louis University and teaches Scratch classes at Center for the Gifted. She and Dr. Dipinto are frequent collaborators, and they are here today in collaboration to present this session for you, Discovering the Wondrous in the Mundane.
Welcome. And our other 3 presenters could not get permission to leave their classrooms for a variety of reasons, but I will introduce them. We put some video clips together, so they're very much a part of this presentation.
Some rustic video clips.
So we'll be interested in who you are and what do you do for your day jobs?
Actually, I'm a PhD student in science education.
Oh,
And
where?
my topic about my thesis is going to be related with particular theory of management. So it's very related.
Right down.
I don't have a day job.
Good. I want to be you.
So it's a very envious position. So I enjoy the visual arts, I have to say, and I like to volunteer. So that's fine.
I work here at the Museum of Art.
All right. Good place to work. I envy you too.
So I've been enjoying coming to all these different sessions. So.
And then
I'm a
you're the
docent.
room steward, right?
Yes, and I'm fortunate to be able to participate in this one, and I've enjoyed the sessions all morning, and I just came from another one, so I'm
Well,
excited
welcome.
to learn.
All right. So what are we talking about? What is this mundane whatever? All right. And essentially, something that I've been doing digital storytelling for over a decade. And in the past 6 or 7 years, I've tried to look at various applications of digital storytelling to visual literacy and science education. And I came up with the idea of a virtual lab. Now, there are commercial virtual labs that you can get. All right. There are ones that are free. There are ones that you pay lots of money for. But my idea was to design a virtual lab that 8th graders could replicate. It would be a model, both in terms of science education, and visual literacy. And this whole thing about, one of the things that whenever I'm teaching, or I go into a classroom and they find out, I'm a chemist, and go, oh, what are you going to make explode? Well, I don't make anything explode. Things that explode usually are an accident. So it's like looking at the mundane, looking at the ordinary, and discovering that extraordinary in the wonders. And of course, we've all seen ice melting, but have we ever really examined ice melting? Both visually, scientifically, aesthetically, and that kind of stuff. So, and another thing that's been going on in science education, we have this another new set of standards. It's called the NGSS, Next Generation Science Standards. And the mantra for there, we're not writing lab reports anymore. We're not doing, well, we're doing some expository writing. But the whole thing is you make a claim, gather some evidence, and you write an argument based on that claim. Right? Now, it's not just writing. Right? Pictures and words. Models are pictures and words. Models that are animated and all that kind of stuff. And I'll share a couple of the stuff in the Common Core and the NGSS near the end to show you some of the specificity. But this whole idea is developing a set of visual literacy skills that then could be applied. And it happens simultaneously. There's not a unit on visual literacy skills and then we're applying. They're in the context of doing this lab and then building their own, designing their own labs. So, again, you can read this here, but the whole idea is It's a way to center both intellectually, artistically, aesthetically, emotionally, and it requires you not just to look at the task at hand, but you need to go, what else do people know about water and melting ice? You know, what is that? It all kind of sets the stage before you actually begin. And again, how do we communicate this information visually? In this digital age, our granddaughter, I mean, very facile with visual information, except it's all surface, right? I mean, you know, she takes 200 pictures of her and her friends. Maybe one of them has some useful visual information in it. And so one of the things that I've seen in the so-called digital, the digital citizens and the digital generation is lots of breadth, very little depth in looking at the visual narrative. And so again, we're not just asking them to look and record and observe all the standard stuff that we've been doing in science education for 1,000 years, or however many years that might want to be. But we're looking for the visual clues in that narrative. It's important that there's very little text. The idea is that the narrative, the investigation unfolds through the visual process. Okay, so what exactly is this thing that I'm talking about? One of the things that my friend Alan Rossman and I did way back before the turn of this century, we used to use a model called the I wonder model. I wonder, I explore, I question. Yeah, I know. Okay. I question, I investigate, I analyze, I share, I act, I inspire, I wonder. It's a constant, it's a cycle. I used to put on a Mobius strip. And on a Mobius strip, there's only one edge and one surface. And so at any place is a stopping place. And this is a much better conceptual framework than other kinds of approaches in science education. So the first step in this virtual lab, and I'm going to play this whole thing, right? It's the I wonder model. And I use iMovie. Yes, you can go into pictures. You know, like the way we used to do it. Everybody was right here. In the paramedical garage. Are actually writing these things and taking notes to visual evidence plan. And what claim you made in your guess, how would you design an investigation to gather the evidence that would either support or refute your claim? of is guessing and trying to gather the evidence to make a claim, to support a claim, and actually design a model that's used to predict. So it kind of goes in. Many of these questions are meant to be formative assessments, so you can find out what students already know, what might be some of their misconceptions, so you can address those during instruction. This is probably the same or different. Most of them say this one's being heated. It's a very low level of understanding of what I'm going to show you the whole one. So we're gathering evidence in 3 different kinds of conditions to use to construct our claim to be a model of healthiness. Most students will say that the salt melts the ice. Lower as well. I'm going to show you a couple of student examples what they responded to each of these statements. When I go in, and I actually go in Deanna's classroom, and grade science teacher at Beach Park, and her and I used to dancing with her, or with the skeleton. A little bit of live theater I performed for her. Okay, so there are 2 skill sets here, and the first one is obviously a set of skills that allows a student to gather information from the virtual lab. So a set of visual literacy skills of how to interpret, understand the information being presented in the visual narrative. So I'm going to show you one here. This is Deanna talking about ice by itself. And notice how she begins, she's using her drawings to show the passage of time, which is really, really incredible. Usually what you see are static images. So I already know that the student has a sense that visual narrative is not static, but unfolding. Right? And now we got some good stuff. All right? I guess it's going to melt, and the prediction is how fast it will melt. Okay? Kind of stuff. Now I'm going to share with you, this is Anna Dipinto. Anna is currently the 6th grade science teacher at Alfred Nobel School. It's a CPS, Chicago Public School, K-8. Anna has a master's plus 30. When she taught at our lab school, we had a lab school at National, she had the rank of assistant professor, and she also holds adjunct positions in both science ed and LEd. So let's see what Anna has to say. And we've been collaborating since she's about 10.
One of the basic concepts of digital science. One must use visual literacy skills to decode written information. When opening a science text, whether it be a DK book or a more traditional science text, they encounter a mirage of visual images that they must make sense of and integrate into the visual and textual narrative. Virtual labs are one way that students can gain the skills to do this integration. I hope that you...
That was me, okay, now let's go back to Deanna again, and I'm now asking her for her to tell me what's going on in her head. Her images told me one thing, but here she's saying there is no evidence of data in the drawing. So I know there's a disconnect between those two. Visually, she gets it. Textually, she doesn't. And here's Haley talking about ice being heated. Again, we kind of have a static drawing, but we do have something happening here, all right? Thinks it's going to melt faster. Now, it depends on the temperature. If it's just room temperature is 22 degrees C. If it's 24 degrees, yeah, it might melt a little faster. So in other words, the sense of how, there's not a sense of how much heat is going on here. Okay? And then I'd like to see what she said here. What is a truthful statement in science? Right? It's like you have to do lots of experiments to know absolutely what will happen. Well, the nature of science says we'll never know absolutely what happened. We can know absolutely what will never happen. Right? So again, there's lots of things going on in looking at a student comments like this. And then here's the one with the salts, okay? All right? And this is Natasha. By the way, these are freshmen and sophomores in high school, actually. Salt will melt the ice and make it, or make it soft. Interesting. Softness. So how hardness and softness has to do with solids and liquids. All right? And again, how does it make sense? Well, she recognizes that she has the evidence to support her claim. That's important, right? She knows that's important. Okay, so here's some of the things that Anna picked up when I asked her to go through analyzing in this set of a whole set of data from the students. And so this idea here, ownership, they give examples. You can introduce vocabulary. This is what I like. They articulate the visual narrative both in words and pictures. Words and pictures, words and pictures. And then they use the data, hopefully, to explain or modify. All right, now, I used to do this investigation with my 8th graders, and it was, well, the first time it was 3.5 hours. Right? So I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but we take 3.5 hours and condense it to 20 minutes. What is the melting point? And what's interesting, very few of my students look. The narrow range is pure the substance. But you can always stop it. Clock. Beaker lights. about equipment, the images are unclear. I was in charge of choosing the images. So there must be a reason why I chose the simulation to have images that were not clear. So you see my green bar. Hello? This way. Okay. So this is a group of 8th graders. And what I like with Sean is, I see how her thinking is. It's like the room temperature, which is warmer than the ice itself, will begin to melt the ice. But what she fails to acknowledge is that the ice will melt at around, in this particular case, because it's tap water, from 3 to 4 degrees C. And it's going to stay that temperature while it's melting. And yes, it's getting its energy from the heat of the room. And then, right, and when he was talking about this, it's like, again, the freezing point and the melting point, although they're the same, the transition requires different kind of visual thinking. So he's stuck in the freezing point, and I have a lot of pre-service teachers who are also stuck there, unfortunately. Okay, I'm going to show you portions of each of these. I like a lot of Vito songs. The data sets are messy. There are a couple outliers that obviously. So, and again, here is Erica, who took a look at and they graphed the information. So graphing is, like Tufte says, is somehow to make data that is hidden in the data set visible. And if you graph all 3 of these investigations, you get a nice, and everything's terminal area, it's nice. But basically, there's a range, a narrow range, of either 3 to 4 degrees or -5 to -3 degrees, where the melting occurs. Okay. And then your Destiny, again, she's trying to put a lot of ideas here together, talking about heat. One of the big misconceptions that K-12 students have, particularly secondary students, that somehow there are heat particles. Because we show on the diagrams little things of heat. So sometimes visual clues that we give can lead to misconceptions as well. And here's some things the students didn't like about the virtual lab. Right? some that was hard to read some of the data points. Each data point went too fast. Clock in the back on how to read, we prefer the digital clock. All right? And data points are not on the same time interval, so it was hard to keep track of. All valid concerns, which means when they would redesign this lab, it would have these possibilities. That's one of the tasks that students could choose to do. Okay. My friend Deanna, she got her undergraduate teaching degree in the late 80s from National College of Education before we became a university. And then she was into business for a long time. Next time I saw her was in 2003. And she was the 8th grade science teacher at Beach Park Middle School. Beach Park is a very interesting community in Illinois. Back right around 2000-ish, it was a rural white community. Well, when they closed all the projects in Chicago, whole gang communities moved up there, instantly changed the population and student body of the school. And I saw Deanna again. She was in our MED program in science education. And she's also the science coordinator for the district. And we have been collaborating since 2003. And she lets me come into her class 5 or 6 times a year and play. So I get to do a lot of stuff. But again, this idea of how the virtual level others be engaged and explore. Again, the Wonder model and their literacy skills. And then this idea of using both writing and drawing. All right? And this whole thing of a multidisciplinary approach. And we look about how do we internalize text, how we use the visual narrative, and how we use models to design a final product, develop deeper understanding. And here, one thing that Deanna in particular noticed is because she has such a diverse population, both ethnically, culturally, the average reading level in her 8th grade science class is 4th grade. And she has about 25% English language learners. So she found that differentiation was inherent and natural in the virtual labs. Okay? That's what she said right here. All right. Then I did this assignment when I teach methods, and all of our teacher prep programs, our early childhood, our elementary, and our secondary. And the virtual lab is a totally online thing. I don't even talk about it. Right? They have to watch the virtual lab. They have to develop a narrative essay, and then they have to teach themselves about the laws of thermodynamics, the special properties of water, and changes of state. So there's an expository essay, and then they have to design a model based on their evidence that explains melting ice. And you need to know prior to this, they've had a very intense conceptual change type lesson where they learned that observations and data are not explanations, which is a common misconception. Okay? And Barr says, where to begin? It's kind of the most daunting. Right? But again, this idea, we have a tendency to try to make things too easy, even for our teacher candidates. And ambiguity leads to creativity, and making it hard hard enough, leads to students feeling some sense of accomplishment, but really having a basis for that. What I like about what Chris had to say is that as he was struggling to develop his model, again, the model is both with pictures and words, visual and textual, that it stimulated his curiosity. So in the act of designing these virtual narratives, or interpreting these virtual narratives, one is engaged in that question. Again, more of the I wonder stuff. All right, and then I'll tell you, I'll learn more about the melting of ice and energy cells in our virtual than I ever had before. So again, it can provide kind of a gestalt in terms of content as well. And Steve, he figured me out pretty well. Since I am not a constructivist, right? Sandy well, but anyway, I do approach science from a humanistic way, and looking at the arts and visual literature as a way to teach science. Right? Okay. All right, anytime you have any questions, just stop.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just,
if you look at what's going on in schools, and how many of you are in schools?
Sort of.
Everything seems to be driven by standards at this point. And that has necessitated a change in the way people teach. And we're seeing in a number of standards that students are being required to think in terms of models. And of course, that's what a virtual lab is all about. And how do you know this? Okay. For instance, in terms of common core connections, strategic use of media in presentations is given a lot of emphasis. Language arts. Structure and the properties of matter in NGSS. Students are asked to develop a model that predicts and describes changes in particle motion, temperature, state, which is what we've seen here. Students are not just looking at and using virtual labs, they're being asked to design their own. They need an understanding of how to portray information graphically. And my experience has been that they don't have a lot of background in trying to do this. They may not know what a good depiction looks like. They also need to be able to read and analyze a visual narrative. And I have found, I taught computer skills to middle school kids for 3 years. And I found that they had no idea what good design was. That if I wanted them to do a brochure or a PowerPoint presentation, they had no idea what a good one should look like. I had to go back to helping them understand how to visually do something well. And one of the ways, oh, Jose fits in here now?
Yeah.
Okay, let me say one thing first.
Yeah.
One of my strong beliefs is that children and adults learn by seeing good examples, whether that's an example of someone teaching well or an example of someone who has displayed information well. And I will get back to that in just a few moments.
Jose is a student of mine for secondary physical science method. He's currently student teaching at Johnson High School.
It's bringing in your personality when you teach. So if you love art, if you're an artist or a poet or a musician, you get to bring these into your science classroom and help inform the students, paint metaphors and pictures. This past summer, I was a teacher for the Center for Gifted, and during one unit, I brought in paintings of Mundane, and his haystacks were different lights. They looked like they were made of different colors. And that great eye that a painter has, not just taking that face value that haystacks are yellow, so I'm just going to paint them yellow. No, these haystacks were blue and purple during sunset. So he really had to have a wonderful eye, and that same eye that makes a detective or a reporter or a dancer great for observing in the mirror, that visual literacy, let teachers really inform her students that that is that creative aspect, that's that discerning aspect, that scientist and a science, a doer of science, a young scientist has to have. So bring in your love of impressionistic film when you make these virtual labs. If you want to have odd angles, surprise the kids, because this is your chance to express yourself too. If you want to, you can very simply just have a data table and then a picture of what's going on. But really, it's your time to be creative and express yourself during it. The kids will appreciate it. If it's just a data table and a picture, they might not be as engaged. Whereas if they have that kind of curiosity, that mystery, and what is that? Oh, now I get what's going on. You're playing an interactive game with them at that time, putting things in different angles. So this state, where it's somehow out of focus, can all of a sudden translate into something going on. Just like in real things, just like your famous in the comics.
Jose's also an accomplished keyboard player, so he is both a physicist and an artist, and he's really a
really good teacher.
Okay.
Okay.
I've got to make a brief aside before I head into this, because I'm going to be talking a little bit about Edward Tufte. And I noticed that the museum store had several of his books. I like seeing that. He hates PowerPoint. Absolutely can't stand PowerPoint presentations. And I feel a little uneasy talking about him using a PowerPoint presentation. So I acknowledge his feelings on that, and in fact, I agree with him, but I'm only one of the collaborators on this paper. Vito pulled some quotations from him that are really cool. One is that design is a choice. And we've got to give the kids the tools that they need to display information and know when it is communicating what they hope to communicate. The principles should not be applied rigidly or in a peevish spirit. They are not logically or mathematically certain. It is better to violate any principle than to place graceless or inelegant marks on paper. The task of the designer is to give visual access to the subtle and the difficult. I see this with gifted kids that I work with in Scratch, which is a visual programming language that was developed at MIT. They are designing something in a graphical mode. And they often have no sense of the balance, the colors, and I think, at least I as an educator have often assumed that they know a lot more than they do. If we're going to do stuff like this, we've also got to give them some background in good design. And again, one of the ways that I most like doing that is to show them good examples, and I use some of the Tufte books and some other stuff I've come across. So we've got to show them good examples so that they'll know what a good example is. And I think I
Okay, so, yeah, we're getting down to it, okay. Closing remarks with Anna again.
I hope that you would take away from this presentation the idea that students need to be able to have the skills to view a visual narrative as a whole and also dissect it into its parts.
The one takeaway that I want you to have as a participant in this virtual lab study and activity is that virtual labs are accomplishable. This is something that you can do in just a short amount of time, and they don't have to be perfect. As a matter of fact, that's sometimes the endearing quality that the students are going to love about them. That is your personal touch.
Okay, we're down here. This is Deanna. What have we got here?
The one takeaway that I think would be very important as the science coordinator, as well as a science teacher, and that I would want you to take away is to open yourself up to science teaching, to non-conventional ways of bringing science to a student. The one thing that my students, when they come in and I ask them whether or not they want to, how have they been in science in years past? Oh, I don't like science. I said, but you haven't had science with me. And until you do, that's when you can make your judgment as to what you want. And bringing in non-conventional ways of learning and teaching science to the classroom is one of the things that I enjoy doing most, because I'm able to tap into some students that we've lost. And that's what I'd like you to take away from this particular project, is how to use non-conventional science methods in teaching students.
All right. So, before we put you to work, any specific questions?
Well, I have a daughter who's in junior high, and last year she didn't have a science textbook. Instead, they created their own science textbook. So she ended up the year with a notebook full of pictures and drawings and her own comments about what they were learning, which in one sense I think is great. I think it goes along with what we're saying here with visual literacy and teaching science. But as a parent, it was very difficult for me to help her with questions because I didn't have, it's been a lot of years since I graduated high school, and going back to the science about a textbook to refer to, I wasn't sure if I was, helping her in the right way and backing up what the teacher was saying. Are you seeing more teachers doing that?
Yes and no. One of the things you should know is, there was a survey done in 2005. They took the 5 top middle school science textbooks used around the country, and a group of physicists, chemists, and biologists looked at the content, and half of it was wrong. And another thing you should know is that there is no such thing as a scientific method. There never has been one, and a hypothesis is not an educated guess. So what we've been doing in science education for as long as I've been, even back when in the 50s when I was going to school, is just simply wrong. And so many teachers are trying with the NDSS and the framework to provide alternatives and use a lot of the electronic media that and giving kids resources and tools to check validity, like you never use Wikipedia as a source, but you could use it as a place to start off with. And what happens with textbook publishers is, they did this when we had the science standard, they did this when we had the Common Core, they put a couple extra pages in, they slap on a sticker saying, this is now aligned to the Common Core or the NDSS. So the idea of a textbook, I know that's what we're familiar with, and that's the source where we went for supposedly accurate information. That's no longer the case, and there's a lot of good stuff available on the internet. There's a lot of good ebooks. Sally Ride has a foundation has these incredible ebooks with all kinds of the Jason Project. There are lots of resources for kids to go to that are text-based, but are not in a textbook. And I know it's difficult for parents because when I was teaching back when kids in the 80s and early 90s, I didn't use any one textbook. I used lots of textbooks. And parents would come to me and say, I couldn't help them with the homework. I said, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you come in and visit for a day and see what it's like, and then they can help you with their homework. So I understand the difficulty. It's really hard because your children are being taught differently than you were taught and the way you felt you learned. And we're trying to move away from textbook science, or for textbook science to be something more interactive, more visual, more with the. And I love the fact that you're designing it and building it. That's I would like to see more of that in middle schools. Unfortunately, I don't. And then high school is another whole issue with AP and honors, and that kind of stuff. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, here's what we're going to ask you to do, all right? We're going to ask you to develop a virtual lab. All right, and that's where all this stuff is up at the top. All right, we are going to, that's not all messed up. Images. Okay. All right. Here's what you're going to do. We have materials up here for you to do it. We have the iPads are mainly to use as cameras that you can send to your email, which can go to these come out, these apples here, where you can
Or
grab
if
it,
you have iPhones,
or you have iPhones.
you can use your iPhone
As
camera.
long as you
or
can download the
smartphone
image
camera,
to the computer, if you have the cable, whatever it is that you need,
or email.
or email. And then when you're ready here, we'll show you how to put it together using iMovie. All right? So I'm just going to give you an example. Here's the idea, that the universe is expanding. Everything is moving away from everything else. And the idea is like, can we gather data to support that claim in a simulation? So I think if I show 4, 5, let's show 5 and 6, and we'll open. Okay, all right. So you look here, you go up the balloons right? You know, you set up, you know, these are background stars, and then you set up a triad of stars, and you measure from one to the other. Okay, here I'm using centimeters. Unfortunately, the materials that I brought are using those 4-letter words, inches, and foot, and yard. So, so we go there, and then we go to, I'm looking at the other two, and then we have a data table. All right? So that's one way to approach that, get started. Right? Then you're going to obviously blow up the balloon some more, and then make the same measurements. All right? And then just keep on trying to see what that comes up to. Okay? Now, the other thing I'm going to give you is, for those of you who need some, all right, where is it? Okay. I downloaded a couple of images on the Big Bang, right, and the expansion of the universe. So I'll leave these up here for you to take a look at. So again, yeah. And then this one here. So here. Then I also copied some text for you to. No, that's not it. Okay. Text. Okay. So, if you want, when we get to iMovie, you want to put some text frames in here. I know it's very small. I can't even read it on the computer, but this here. Oh, bigger so normal people can read it. So we invite you to come on up here, supper, you know. Don't be afraid. You gotta blow up a balloon, you gotta set off somewhere. Okay, I got the balloons, I got the stars, I got the tape measurements.
We've got 2 iPads for photos.
And if you've never used iMovie before, it's real easy. I mean, I'm not using the controller, nothing else.
Oh, thanks. And we have stars.
And you might want to do it by yourself. I mean, somebody's going to have to hold the balloon. I mean, I can hold the balloon, okay?
You can work with a partner if
Or
you
work
want
with a
to.
partner? Yeah. And think about some of the things in design.
I thought this was speaking about any group where being beautiful and nice and things like that.
About what? Oh, and you know, you got me!
Thank you.
One of the first things Jose, when I put this together, said, what part of the balloon we're going to use? I have to make that decision. It's here. I mean, I could help, I could do it, but that was no fun. Did you hide it?
I sure did.
Okay,
So far, so good.
So how are you gonna blow it up? As the universe expands?
That's why I'm holding mine shut.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ah.
that was the first thing. You said,
That's-
We've got plenty of
minute,
No,
don't
no.
let it.
Okay. Let me get this today. I thought you was a beautiful mouse.
No, it's a beautiful balloon,
And
I
I
was gonna
just
say.
do another one, it's a, you know, a million years later.
That's a great balloon. But if you do that, then you're adding a variable, right?
That is true. I can agree with that, by the way.
Not to say adding a variable, look at that thing, but. No, that's a little bit That's always hard to say.
Presuming
Yeah,
it's
you want
not.
me to hold that for you, or you sorry, on it?
So we are taking a picture of it with the.
Yeah, do you know how to use the, okay. Well, if you look up, Kaki, could you put on the iPad and the camera, please? Okay.
Passcode, which I.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then camera. And then slide it to where it says photo. That's a slide thing. On the side there, is that photo?
It says photo.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And this is the button.
Switch to the picture. So that is, well, I guess it's covered.
You take them out of the cover, do you? Oh, me neither.
And these are,
Unless you hit it, so it takes a picture in front, and you can just,
Yeah.
no, I'll.
Yeah, oh, because I'm usually looking down.
Where's my eyeball?
you said you were gonna put it in the computer case.
I like that. Oh. That's acceptable. I love the please. Oh, my favorite. It's interesting, you know, they, one of the things that I'm doing this show, and I do storytelling. And then,
Did you do the astronomy next year?
For some reason, that volume isn't working.
there, and then you get it to like 5.
Oh.
I would love to see it. But again, naked eye astronomy for kids is just amazing, using all kinds of geometry, of course, which are
So now we might just record it.
But
Oh,
again,
it's because
telling this, for the same grouping of stars of different cultures around the world, had different stories to remember them.
Yeah, that's
So
beautiful.
it's always fun.
And navigation lights.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, is it?
You have this one and this.
What? Okay, if you go, why don't you go into my computer case and get mine up?
I can use my cell phone. I'll use my cell phone.
I'm sorry, I'll type, without getting it out. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm crippled, she's my leg sometimes. Very
Well,
nice.
you can help me.
Is it there, Karen?
I made a nice, pretty little. Okay, so now we need to take, I need to take a picture with the tape.
So, do you want me to hold the tape?
Yeah.
Picture? Tape? Does it matter? Should we get one that has the same?
No, no,
I don't do
I'm
engineering.
really,
I don't do engineering either. I mean, I literally, I tell the kids before I let it work, they don't hear it.
okay, happening, how about that?
Yeah.
And that was between the, those two, to the,
Yeah.
Need another
to
one?
the.
We're using my iPhone.
Middle
Okay.
to solid.
Oh,
middle
red,
to-
that's green. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I moved it.
All right.
Oh.
And then do we want to blow it up again?
Yeah.
How many times are we going to blow it up?
Not quite. Just,
Okay.
I don't know, but I enjoy this.
Got-
I will,
got time left.
you can never find these,
Okay.
so.
No, it's just other
It
people-
sticks?
I don't.
Okay.
I like this whole material.
I have one for my phone.
I mean, those are each about 7 years. We know the real one.
Can you get my number or something?
I think so.
Here,
All right.
Leo.
What made you, what did you?
All right, so now that we've done that.
I bet you
Well, in science, you need, in science, you don't need them.
Sorry.
Really?
And-
And send us?
Yeah, class like I wouldn't, I can't imagine living in a global society.
That's pretty good.
And, you know, we're the only
Green
country in
and
the
the-
world that uses these
So do you
archaic
see
languages.
that changing eventually? Maybe not.
Not, because
Maybe not now.
not enough, I mean, not enough, more.
Societal demands.
And now, okay, you do it, I just.
That's nice.
You want me to do it?
There's another one. I don't have this one.
Ooh, that's perfect, okay.
And then you're gonna go on to one.
Did you take a picture?
Yeah, but I guess I didn't use the tape measure. I just measured it.
Well, you can always take another, right, you can always do whatever you want.
Start
It's
now.
your lab.
Started
You can
now.
take a picture, you know what, you can take a picture of your table.
Well, the size of the balloon changed, so.
Ah,
Think now it's
but
like
you're in
mom
control,
said.
you
That's
have.
right.
So I hadn't taken a picture.
Here, I'll hold this while you take it.
You want to use this one?
Oh.
That's one way, if you want to just hold it over it.
All right. All right,
Okay.
all right.
And another little world.
Now you're gonna blow it up some more.
Okay, so after we take the pictures, what are we to do?
Send it to,
Blow it up a little more and then measure and take it
Right,
again.
pictures should go to maybe your email. You can send them to your email, then you,
Send them your email.
and then you can pick them up off of,
Yeah, but I, so I sent it to my home.
Oops.
email, you said?
well, here we'll do it. They're using the, so you, are you gonna measure? Or-
Yeah, I did, process, yeah, so.
So we now got,
Oh, I should blow it in one, you know, what do we have? One, yeah, one, this quarter, 3/4.
Three
The other
quarters?
one? Yeah, that's exactly what we would expect.
so it went
Now
up,
we moved up to 3/4, that's not bad.
okay, so it expanded,
Oh, we did.
and it's equal. You wanna take the picture?
It's 440.
Four, four.
I think I did. I think I did.
So what do you folks you wanna do? It's time to, we have to stop.
So that's.
What I can do is, I have a set of pictures, images that I can send you, you can your email addresses, and then you can try to put this together yourself. With either iMovie, Movie Maker, Photoshop, there's all kinds of possibilities. I like using iMovie because it allows really to, with the Ken Burns effect, and it is not effects driven like Movie Maker. You really need to use visual literacy skills that's developed in the area. So if you'd like a set of images, I can send you those and stuff like this, so you can make your own. So just make sure I have your email, and I will do that.
Oh, cool, that would be kind of fun.
Yeah, so here, why don't we do this? Here, if you put your name and your emails in back here, and in a few days, we'll get all that stuff in here.
So kind.
And I also have, they dropped off during the session, the abstracts for tomorrow. So if anyone, how anyone would like one.
And if you'd like access to the Melting Ice virtual lab, and I can send it to a Dropbox, and you can always view it in the Dropbox, kind of download it and change it if you big. I'm more than happy to let anybody use that. I don't have any, there's no commercial value to it, why not? I was that good. Okay, so TV Gal